What is going on, everybody? Welcome back to NFL Turf Talk here on DSM Media's Turf Talk YouTube channel. Guys, first and foremost, if you are new to the channel, if you like the content, if you want to be interactive throughout the show, make sure to smash that subscribe button. It is the best spot to get your thoughts, comments, and questions pulled up here on the screen with your host. I am one half of them tonight, Dylan Davis. To my right, my faithful co-host, Scotty. Week 13 is in the rearview mirror. We're going to be taking you through all of our takeaways, all of our reactions, the wild card, the standings, everything starting to heat up this week, man. Great Thursday night matchup we're going to dive into with the Steelers and the Patriots tonight. Also, our Week 14 updated power rankings will be coming your way later on in the show. But my man, how are things? And happy Thursday.
Yeah, happy Thursday, man. Week 14, we're finally here. We got to close out the Week 13 the right way. And of course, get Week 14 started the right way, as you mentioned earlier with that Thursday night primetime
It's a good one.
Bailey Zappi versus Mitch Trubisky. So
Can't wait.
that'll be a fun one to talk about. I'm sure that'll be a super long segment. Other than that, man, we got a few takeaways to go through from Week 13, and I think things got even more interesting.
Yeah,
with the things that took place in Week 13, so it'll be fun to talk about.
Absolutely. I mean, I think first and foremost, we're not going to dive too much into it. Later on, when we get to power rankings, we'll discuss that one furthermore. But we broke down the Eagles and the Niners game on Monday on the Faithful Fanatic Show. So if you guys want to hear our in-depth recap of that matchup, biggest matchup of Week 13, make sure to head on over to the DSM Philadelphia YouTube channel. You can find that show for Monday morning and get more in-depth with that one. But my biggest thing looking at what happened this past week, Scotty, and what we can take moving forward, man, is there are a handful of teams. If you go back a week or two ago and we were talking within the power rankings, we were talking tiers, right? How there's really the Eagles and the Niners and, maybe the Ravens and the Chiefs in the A tier. Then there were a bunch of teams in the B tier, like the Lions and the Jags. And sometimes they want to climb up to A, but they come right back down to reality. There's another class. There's another tier that we have on our hands now. And it's teams we envisioned being pretty poor this year, being pretty bad. That started out bad. That started out proving us right and validating our preseason predictions. But now, some of these teams are 500. They're above 500. They're fighting for their divisions. They're fighting to make a wild card. And if you go back to Week 13, man, I mean, just look at some of these matchups, Scotty. The Indianapolis Colts, obviously a game they were slightly favored in, but they go on the road. They win an overtime game. Gardner Minshew has this team rolling. They're 7-5. I mean, we're going to talk about Trevor Lawrence and the Jags. He goes down. That could affect the way that division plays out. They could also still fight for a wild card spot there. The Falcons with Desmond Ridder, man, 6-6. They go on the road. I know it was Tim Boyle, whatever the hell his name is, but they beat that defense on the road in bad weather. They're 6-6, leading their division. The Packers with Jordan Love take down the Chiefs. They're 6-6, fighting for a wild card. The Rams score 36 against that Browns defense that we always talk about. They're 6-6, fighting for a wild card. There's a new tier evolving right now around the NFL, man, and it's this tier of wild card teams, right? The Vikings are right in that mix as well, with Josh Dobbs leading the way. The Texans, with C.J. Stroud and a rookie QB, they're in that conversation. It's been a pretty wild ride, specifically in Week 13 for those teams, man.
Yeah, I think we're just getting to that point in the season where teams are starting to iron out who's real and who's not. And there's obviously this tier of teams that are kind of finding themselves like right in the middle of things. It's really over in the AFC when you look at it, man. Some of those teams in the playoff picture that's getting ironed out right now. But I think it kind of starts with, the amount of injured quarterbacks you see in the NFL right now. I got a list for you of the starting quarterbacks that are injured right now. So you have Trevor Lawrence, Joe Burrow, Aaron Rodgers, Kenny Pickett, Anthony Richardson, Deshaun Watson, Kirk Cousins, and Daniel Jones. So I don't know if I'm missing any. If I am, definitely correct me if I'm wrong out there. But You look at that list of quarterbacks, that's what, 1, 2, 3, 4,
about
5,
8.
6, 7, 8.
Yeah.
There's some of these quarterbacks where the situation has maybe projected, it's maybe uplifted their team. You see in Gardner Minshew's standpoint, A-Rich
Right.
goes down, they start winning more games. It's not to say that Minshew is
Correct.
better than A-Rich.
Right.
A-Rich started the season pretty hot. But nonetheless, he comes in, he's able to keep them afloat. The Steelers, right? They just lost their quarterback. They get smoked by the Cardinals last week. And you got to see what they look like with Mitch Trubisky. So there's teams on the opposite ends.
Did
of
you say
things
Deshaun
here.
Watson? I might have missed that one.
I
but-
did, yeah.
yeah,
Deshaun
okay.
Watson was mixed in there. Daniel Jones, right? He gets injured. Their team plummets even
Right.
further. They
Playoff
weren't
team
playing
last
well.
year, very, very poor this
Yeah,
year.
so you see how it irons out, man, and it starts to paint an even crazier picture
Yeah.
of how things are. And I guess what it leads me to, and maybe as we look at that tier of teams, it leads to the question, which of these teams are going to make it in the first place? But when you look at the quarterbacks that I named, which one do you think was the biggest injury this season as far as like affecting that team's trajectory?
I mean, it has to be what happened on Monday Night Football in Week 1, right? It
Week
has
one,
to be
right?
all of
Has
the
to be
hype
Aaron
surrounding Aaron Rodgers.
Yeah.
That team with that defense, right? His rapport with Garrett Wilson. They have Super Bowl aspirations for the first time in a while, and he goes down 3 or 4 plays into the season. And that just basically took out a contender from playoff contention and allowed room for another team to come forward. Now, you can take that anywhere, right? Joe Burrow. If Joe Burrow doesn't go down for the season, Cincinnati is right in the mix for a wild card spot more than likely, even though they started out slowly. So he's another huge name. You look at, if Trevor Lawrence has to miss 2 weeks, man, what that can do in the AFC South division. But as far as trajectory of the team's season, it has to be what happened in New York.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think the other guy that you would think of there, even though he didn't start the season, he didn't play very well this season, Deshaun Watson. I think if the Browns have him at quarterback, they're a lot more scary if you're going into a playoff matchup against them rather than playing
Thompson.
Exactly. So there's storylines mixed in there, but I do agree. I think Aaron Rodgers is the largest drop off, especially with you seeing how Zach Wilson's played. But then also play a bunch of tightly contested games.
It is crazy, though.
Yeah.
It's crazy that you bring that point up. And like I said, I think the biggest storyline now with what just happened on Monday Night Football has to be the Jags and Trevor Lawrence's injury, how long that keeps him out for, with that high ankle sprain, where you had the Texans, you had the Colts banging on the door to try to take that division from them. That's very well a possibility now, especially with the loss. It's not like, Jesus, who came in for Trevor Lawrence? Why am I drawing a blank? CJ Beathard. He comes in. It's not like he won the game in overtime and they added another W to the column. No, they lost. So that brings them even closer in that race. So that's a big storyline now. But
the big game from Jake Browning, I mean, it keeps Cincinnati technically alive. They have a very easy
I want to say one
schedule
thing. So hold on, real quick. I'm glad we're talking CJ Beathard. You mentioned Jake Browning. We see what Josh Dobbs is doing all year, right? But it makes you question how the New York Jets are in the situation that they're in.
Yeah.
It makes you see guys all across the league playing with lesser talented defenses, playing with worse, running games, whatever the case may be. Maybe they have better wide receivers than Jets, but whatever. They're playing with a lesser talented unit around them, a team around them. And you're seeing guys be able to push the football down the field at this level. Jake Browning can clearly make throws at this level. CJ Beathard has been in the league for a little while. He can make throws. Josh Dobbs with his electric play, been a journeyman his whole career. Hell, dude, you're seeing what Gardner Minshew's doing with the Colts roster. And you're telling me the New York Jets with that defense, with Garrett Wilson, with Brees, you're telling me they're in this scenario because they have no one to play quarterback for them after Aaron Rodgers goes down?
Right.
That is embarrassing as a franchise.
The fact that they weren't willing to just go out on the limb and bring in a guy like Carson
Anybody,
Wentz is
anybody,
very
dude.
odd to me, man.
I agree.
And I think the Steelers too. Like I get it, you have Kenny Pickett in house, but
Yeah.
you were ready to just have Mitchell Trubisky there if that just so happened to
If that
not
fails,
work
right?
out,
That goes south,
right? And they're
Agreed.
the same situation because it's like they got weapons there, they got running backs. Jalen Warren's come
Yeah.
too. Najee Harris is still there. Obviously, you got the weapons on the
It's
outside.
just wild,
the
man.
tight
Like
end, and
Scotty,
the
what
defense,
if they had Taylor Heineke?
don't address
Right?
it.
What if they had Taylor
I mean,
Heineke? Like
yeah.
Atlanta has him as backup. He started.
Yeah.
What if they had him playing quarterback? You're telling me
Rounded
they
out
wouldn't
in
have won a
Atlanta,
couple
but
more
Atlanta
games?
Not as good as the Jets. So
Yeah.
yeah.
It's
There's
crazy to me,
plenty of
right?
options.
So I mean, honestly, shame on. Like, listen, you're not projecting Aaron Rodgers to tear his Achilles on the fourth play of the season, okay? And I get in a lot of people's minds, and it's true. If once Rodgers goes down, you can throw out Super Bowl aspirations. I'm not trying to suggest that if Jake Browning was the quarterback of the Jets right now, or Taylor Heineke was the quarterback of the Jets right now, that they'd be in a race for their division title, that they'd still be in contention for a Super Bowl. No. So I do get the point, kind of, what's the point once Rodgers goes down? But the dude's literally trying to make a comeback to get on the field right now for you.
Not at week one. You know what I mean? You don't just accept
Agreed.
that at week one.
Agreed.
That, okay, Aaron Rodgers is down, our season's over. Like week one, you go out and you address that immediately.
Especially when the dude's trying to make a comeback right now.
Like,
so if you would have just won an extra game or two, you'd be in a completely different situation with him kind of on the fence of coming back. Whereas now there's absolutely zero reason for Aaron Rodgers to come back and play a snap for this Jets team this season.
Yeah, they're in a bad spot. And I think you look around the league at like some of the backups that have been successful. They're all like journeyman type of quarterbacks that have, started at one point, maybe floundered out, and now they're getting a second chance or whatnot. Josh Dobbs, Gardner Minshew, right? These guys have experience. Zach Wilson is not that. And I think around the league, you're seeing that kind of down the line. Like you go to the Patriots, they have Bailey Zappi and they have Mac Jones. Where's the veteran presence? You let a guy like Cam Newton walk. You can't tell me that Cam Newton wouldn't be better on the Patriots than those two quarterbacks. Like, obviously, hindsight 2020, you look back on it. I don't care what shape Cam Newton's in right now. He's better than Mac Jones, and he's better than Bailey Zappi for that team.
He's only had to play, 3 snaps for the Eagles this year, and we were ripping him in preseason and training camp for how bad, it looked in the reports you were seeing. But you're telling me, like, Marcus Mariota couldn't win a football game with the New York Jets with that defense right now? Like, when they played the Atlanta Falcons in New York this past week, I promise you, almost any other quarterback in the National Football League can win that game for you. You gave up 13 points.
Yeah.
You're not playing a top 2 defense
Marcus
on the other side.
He threw a pass like upside down last year, so I don't know. I'm kidding. But
when you think about it, in reality, none of it makes sense, man. Gardner Minshew couldn't win a game with this Eagles team last year. Yeah. He lost to Andy Dalton at home last year. Yet he's got a 80% lesser talented team in Indianapolis, 7-5 right now. It's so weird, this league, man. But with all that said, we talk about that tier of teams that are knocking on the door of a wild card, or even in the AFC South and NFC South too, trying to win their division. It all goes back to those injuries, like you said, because if Aaron Rodgers doesn't go down and T-Law doesn't get hurt on Monday night and they win that game, and Barrow doesn't go down, I mean, you're literally talking about 2 less playoff spots in the NFC, right? If Deshaun Watson doesn't go down, maybe the Browns have another win or 2 and they're fighting with the Ravens for the division title right now, right? Yeah. So it left the door open for a lot of these other teams, but that's the AFC, man. Yeah. The NFC picture is a lot. It's less intriguing, but there's something there when you're looking at the way that Jordan Love has kind of responded over the last couple of weeks. And don't get me wrong, when you have multiple bets on the Chiefs on Sunday Night Football and you're watching Jordan Love play Madden and hardly throw an incompletion that night, it's very infuriating to watch. But I mean, he's got them at 6-6. He just beat Patrick Mahomes on Sunday Night Football. The Rams, we thought, were just down and out 4 weeks ago. Matthew Stafford has them surging. They're 6-6 fighting for a spot. 3 teams in the NFC South could win that division. So, let me ask you this. Well, let's forget the NFC South. The Rams and the Packers in terms of a while. And I'll throw the Vikings in there for you as well, because Justin Jefferson should be returning soon anyway. Rams, Packers, Vikings. Which team has the best chance of any success in the 2023 postseason? Because, again, we're in the same conversation as forget winning a Super Bowl. I think we can all agree there. But which team could win a wildcard game? Which team could upset a top 3 seed on the road?
So it's a tough question, because basically the way it works out, it's all about matchups, right? And whoever matches up with Atlanta, they'll have a chance at winning that game. And whoever matches up, honestly, wholeheartedly, whoever matches up, I'll be more specific about if.
Well, can I throw something at you real quick?
If the Green Bay Packers or the Minnesota Vikings match up with their division rival, Detroit Lions, they can win that game. We just saw the Packers beat the Lions on Thanksgiving Day. There's a lot of different factors that went into that game. They were similar to what people have kind of said about the Eagles and their short, amount of time with 3 games. Lions were going through something similar going into that game with short weeks. But that being said, they did drop a game at home against the Green Bay Packers and Jordan Love. And I think when you look at it from that perspective, either of those, obviously Detroit, I think, could get upset.
To be fair, whoever played
Dallas.
Right. So Dallas or the Eagles are going to get the 4-5 matchup versus the winner of the South, right? So that's where and no offense, whoever the 2 seed is, whether it's the Niners, the Eagles, or the Cowboys, and however that plays out, right? None of those teams we listed are going on the road and beating either of those 3 teams. So I do agree with you. The true matchup with the teams we're talking about in the Rams and the Vikings and the Packers, it's going to come down to who gets Detroit.
3 and who can play with Detroit. 2 and 7, 3 and 6, and 4 then 4 and 5.
So the 3-6 matchup is where we're leaning here. As so long as Detroit doesn't somehow get to the 2 seed, but I don't
2 seed, then I would alter to the 2 and the 7.
Right,
so
right.
But I would list. I guess what we would say is Lions and whoever wins the NFC South.
Let me pivot off of this. Let me pivot off of this. Does that say more about the teams that are knocking on the door to get in the playoffs, or does that say more about the Detroit Lions in a negative way for us? Because we're talking, they could legitimately be the 2 seed. They could legitimately still win the 1 seed. We're going to say that that's not going to happen, but we're talking about them being a 2 seed playing the final wild card. That 7 seed has not won a game since it's been created in the NFL playoff format.
Yeah.
And we're putting the Lions on upset alert here heading into week 14.
For example, man, if somehow the goddamn Rams ended up going to Detroit and playing the Lions, and you have that Matthew Stafford versus Jared Goff matchup,
wholeheartedly agree.
I'm not saying that the Rams will.
No,
I'm just saying that is probably out of the top 3 seeds in the NFC, the Lions are the most likely they're going to get upset the opening weekend.
Put it this way. I don't
want to discredit them too much. They are 9-3.
No,
but we've
absolutely.
seen some very bad outings defensively from them.
That's the staple, right? Especially in that Rams matchup, when you're sitting here talking about Super Bowl winning head coach, Super Bowl winning quarterback, Cooper Kupp, Puka Nacua, and so on and so forth with some of those weapons, man. You still have that. Listen,
even Jordan Love, bro, it's crazy, but you look at his peaks this season, he can hit you off for 300 passing yards and 3 touchdowns in a game. He can do it. He's shown that. And so, when you look at it from that perspective,
he showed it in that stadium 2 weeks ago.
If they played Minnesota, I would probably give them more than a reasonable amount of benefit to the doubt against Minnesota. That would probably be the least, the lesser team out of all of those teams. Even the Seahawks, I think I would take over Minnesota. But
agree.
they are getting
I agree.
Justin Jefferson back. As
Seattle,
you know,
it's funny. We didn't even include Seattle.
Seattle,
In this conversation.
They can upset those teams as well. I would throw them in there.
I agree. The Seattle would probably be the best of those teams, the most complete when you talk about what they offer on defense, and then DK and Tyler Lockett and the way that JSN kind of exploded against Dallas, and the way they can run the ball at times when healthy. Seattle would probably be the best of those teams for me. But I mean, the Rams did just go into Seattle a few weeks ago.
Yeah, they beat them both times this year.
So yeah,
Rams are getting healthy, man. I think that's the kicker there with them.
But don't they still just lack talent on defense, though, man?
Yeah, absolutely. That would be the weak part of their team is the defensive side of the ball. But when you have an offense like that, you can score points, and that if it turns into a shootout, it turns into a shootout, and that's a game they can win. As long as they can stay healthy. I think Kyren Williams really helps their running game. Cooper Kupp obviously
came back off the injury and exploded.
Yeah, literally came back like he didn't miss a game. So yeah, there's some volatile teams at the bottom of that. Like, take the Falcons out of the equation, right? There's some volatile teams. Like, do you think? I don't know. We just watched the Cowboys dog the Rams, right, in Dallas.
Yeah.
They wouldn't play. So they wouldn't end up playing them anyways. They would be a wild card team. So they're going to play NFC South regardless at the way it's set up right now. Yeah, I would just put Detroit on upset alert, and then whoever wins the NFC South, if you even want to call that an upset, they're just the division.
Yeah, it would like that. That would be the ironic thing. It would be in Atlanta or in whoever wins that division, and whether it's the Eagles or the Cowboys coming to town, the Eagles or the Cowboys quite literally might be 10-point favorites in that game.
Yeah, literally.
So that would be fun. The division winner, the host team would have to put someone else on upset alert, and that's pretty damn sad, to be honest.
What about just taking the same exact combo over to the AFC? And I know it's kind of a lot harder because you have more teams there. You have 4 teams that are 7-5 in the AFC right now: Pittsburgh, Cleveland, Indianapolis, and Houston. And then you got 3 6-6 teams: Denver, Cincinnati, and Buffalo. Which Buffalo, crazy enough, still has a chance at getting in there, man. And they turn into that 7 seed that you definitely don't want to play in the playoffs. That's what they become in that situation.
That's pretty funny, though, because, again, similar to Seahawks, but on steroids.
Yeah.
We left a 500 team out of that conversation.
Run into
because they're not supposed to be in that conversation. They're not supposed to be 6-6.
Exactly.
So, to your point, if they were the 7 seed
right now,
I mean, that's unfair almost. If you're the 2 seed, it's almost. Do you know how mad I would be if I
feel you.
If I missed the 1 seed by half a game or by a tiebreaker? I get 2 seed, right? And then Josh Allen gets to come to town. And listen, I know I get on Josh Allen more so than probably anybody in this country gets on Josh Allen.
As the 2 seed.
But that's that's not right.
Not fair, man.
It's not right at all.
Who's the other team out of those kind of like mid-tier teams in the AFC? Who's the other team aside from the Bills you would look at like that?
That you don't want to see in the first round?
Yeah.
I honestly, I wouldn't look at anybody in the same light I look at Buffalo. Cincinnati, sure, but with no Burrow, that takes all the juice out of them. So no, Buffalo's in a tier of their own for that sense. But in terms of who's around them that I wouldn't want to see, I mean, I'm not going to change my mind after 2 losses, even though they're 2 pretty bad losses. I'll stick with the Browns simply because of that defense.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
You got the Colts, the Texans, Denver, Russell Wilson, Jake Brown. There's no one else you would fear like you would fear Buffalo.
Out of all those teams, like who I would want to see if I was one of those top teams,
I'd want to see the Colts wholeheartedly.
The Colts, the Colts are that team.
Let's call the spade a spade, right? It's amazing what he's got going on down there. Let's just please. Let's just
Who
stop.
would be that next team though? Would it be the Texans, Steelers, or Broncos for you, or Bengals? Obviously, I think the Bengals would be
Bengals because of the
a decent
quarterback
one. No
scenario
quarterback.
situation. The Texans and the Steelers, right?
Yeah.
Very interesting. The Texans obviously head-to-head beat the shit out of the Steelers earlier, so that should make me want to say the Texans. The Texans provide 1,000 times more danger on the offensive side of things, but again, you're talking
Absolutely.
playoff football. You don't want to play TJ Watt in that defense in the first round. You're not going to want to do it.
Yeah, I kind of agree.
I mean, that's a game where you could, I don't know. You could hold the Steelers to 13 points and still lose the game because of how good the Steelers defense can be. So it's interesting. I know I said interesting a lot on this show, and it's because I go back to this past week and it's only the end of week 13. We have 4-5 more games left to play here on the season. But a lot of playoff talk, and I think rightfully so, the way that things are starting to take place and kind of shake out right here, man, where you're like, okay.
Man, it gets crazy when you look at it because, obviously you got Miami and Baltimore at the top. Kansas City just lost to Green Bay.
Yeah, can we go there for a second? I wanted to bring that up to you as well because we just spoke about a 9-win Lions team like they can be put on upset alert.
Yeah.
And this team is not the Detroit Lions. They have rings and trophies and everything to stack up behind them that the Lions do not have.
Yeah.
But this is a Kansas City Chiefs team that did just lose to Jordan Love and the Green Bay Packers on Sunday Night Football. The Chiefs are now 8-4. It's still a very, very good record. But I mean, dude, the Eagles are getting talked about like they shouldn't have belonged in the Super Bowl last year. They're 10-2. They still hold the number 1 record in the league. The Chiefs are 8-4 and still get the same amount of respect they get in the AFC year to year. My point here, that offense is a problem, Scotty. Those receivers are a problem. Patrick Mahomes, down by 1 possession, got the ball twice in the fourth quarter, threw in a bad interception with 5 minutes left in the game. Couldn't come back. Obviously, they missed a PI call. We could talk about that another time. At the end of the day, they scored 19 points. In all 4 Chiefs loss, their opponent has only had this. What was the stat I just saw? In all 4 Chiefs losses, they've been held to under 20 points.
Yeah, that makes sense.
They struggle to score touchdowns, specifically in the second half of games. I'm telling you, man, I know it's Andy. I know it's the greatest quarterback of our generation. I know it's maybe the greatest tight end of all time. I know that's a championship pedigree defense and signal caller and Spagnuolo. Could they be put on upset alert? In Arrowhead, 2 seed, 3 seed in the AFC.
Who they would play the Browns right now if that shaped out.
Okay. How are they scoring against the Browns defense? Now, vice versa, I think that the Chiefs defense would show up in a big way.
Yeah.
But how are they scoring against the Browns defense?
I don't know. It would be a tight matchup. I think it's one of those things. But you could say that probably about any of those teams that they would match up against.
What if they had to play the Bills?
They had to play the Bills. I mean, we're going to get to see them play this weekend, so we'll see how that plays out. But it's a dangerous team for them. But I think I could say that for the entire AFC, though. I think Bills going to Baltimore.
Sure.
I think they could beat Baltimore. I think they could beat, obviously, their division rival Miami, straight up. So I think maybe that's the calling card for the AFC. There's really no team at the top that you can say
let's go here. Forget first round. Forget wild card.
Yeah.
Forget a first round exit. Second round, not AFC Championship, which they've been to every year since Patrick Mahomes has been their quarterback. Miami, Ravens, Jags. If they did have to play that Pittsburgh defense, they beating any of those teams right now for your money? I know we've seen them beat the Jags earlier in the season. I know we've seen them beat Miami.
Yeah. Yeah, I think.
But
they
how
would beat
many
the
more
Jags.
red flags do we need to get from this Kansas City offense and this receiving core before we say, uh-oh, it might be a little too much for Patty to overcome this season?
I don't know, man. I feel like I'm just not there with them. I don't know. Like they have, a 4-loss season, and all of a sudden it's like everything goes out the
But
window.
that to bring
I
it back
can't
to this
operate
team
like
on the
that.
wall behind me, this is what I'm trying to get at a little
Yeah.
bit, is this team is being questioned by
Yeah.
everybody and their mother
and
right now.
That's how I feel about it. It's like if I feel that I can't sit here and like ask myself if the Eagles, go against this team in the NFC, are they going to lose? Like if I can't feel that way about them, then I feel like I can't feel that way about the Chiefs either, if
Really?
that makes sense. I know the Chiefs have 2 more losses, but I don't know. Like if we're just they have big wins this season too. Like they have beat the Miami Dolphins. They have beat the Jags with Trevor Lawrence. So would they beat the
I
Jags
agree.
without Trevor
I
Lawrence?
agree. And I know
I would
I'm
take them
about
against
to
the
be
Steelers. Like
I know I'm about
I
to
know
be
what you're
such a
getting at,
hypocrite.
though. I know what
I
you're getting
know
at.
I'm really about to be such a hypocrite, Scotty.
The only team that I would take over the Chiefs still right now in the AFC is the Baltimore Ravens. That's
Really?
the only team that I would definitively take over the Chiefs right now.
I'm about to sound like the world's biggest hypocrite. They will not beat the Miami Dolphins. You got to hold on. You got to play them in Germany. Hold on. You got to play them in Germany. And your offense scored 2 touchdowns. You play like that again against those. You're not holding those weapons to 14 points again. And by the way, you'd be in Miami in the postseason if it's shaped out right now. You're not holding. We just watched Jordan Love put up Madden numbers against this defense. You're not holding Tua and Waddle and Tyreek to 14 points again. You're probably, with 30 seconds left before halftime, not forcing a Tyreek Hill fumble and returning it for 6 points to ultimately win the game.
I don't know. There's a lot of probablys and what ifs mixed in there. And what
I got no. All right, I said probably. I got no what ifs about it. I'm taking the Dolphins.
The Dolphins have beat nobody this season.
I know.
They have beat no one.
I got you.
You know what I'm saying? Like they have
I got
beaten.
you.
They have done nothing to give us that type of confidence that they can beat the Kansas City Chiefs. But the Chiefs have beat teams that should give us confidence that they could beat the Dolphins, and they did beat the Dolphins. Like
my concern with the Chiefs,
you know what I mean?
My concern with the Chiefs is just greater than my limited concern with the Eagles in this. Like we just talked about the red flags with the Eagles.
Yeah.
And those are concerns you have moving forward where, if they come out in the NFC Championship game in the playoffs, are they going to bite you? My concerns with the Chiefs are just magnified times 1,000 with that offense, to where I look at that matchup and I go, dude, I can't see it. Like they're not going to outshoot the Dolphins.
I'm as concerned about the Chiefs beating the Dolphins in the playoffs as I am about the Eagles beating the Cowboys in the playoffs. Like that's where I would put it. The Eagles have already beat the Cowboys. Why would I favor the Cowboys over the Eagles in the playoffs? Chiefs have already beat the Dolphins. Sure. Why would I favor the Dolphins over them? That's how I look at it. Like the Cowboys haven't beat really anybody. They just got their first win against a team above 500.
Let me ask you this.
Same thing with the Dolphins.
Nah, I can't go there. I was going to back up my conversation, I was going to take it to a level I don't want to get to with the Eagles, so I'm not even going to do that because we're just not losing Sunday night, so fuck that. Forget what I was about to do.
Because when you're saying like this about Patrick Mahomes in that Dolphins game in Germany, it just takes me back to the game against Dallas, and I'm like, well, if Dak doesn't step out of bounds, like, who knows how that – you know what I mean? Like, if we go down that what-if rabbit hole, then we could do that for a lot of teams around the league. So, like, at the end of the day, I think that you certainly can put the Chiefs on upset alert throughout the playoffs, but I would also put an asterisk beside it that says Patrick Mahomes and Andy Reid. Like, that's the way I would put it. Like, yes, they could lose to the Bills in the first round if they matched up. Do I think they could lose to like the Steelers, Browns, like these teams without a quarterback? I'm not sure about that. I don't think I would take them in that game. But I think if you saw them matched up against a team like Buffalo, like you said earlier, that is a team that maybe I'm not putting my money on the Chiefs. I'm not putting my money on anything, right? Like maybe I'm staying away from that game. It's a toss-up. And to that point, I almost fear more. Like if I'm the Chiefs, I almost fear the Buffalo Bills more than the Miami Dolphins, man, as weird as that sounds.
It's interesting, man.
It's weird. It is weird, but I think it speaks to how weird the league is.
Before we move on, let me give credit to Patrick Mahomes in a weird way. He has MVPs. He has Super Bowl rings. He has blank straight AFC championship appearances. He's the greatest quarterback of our generation. But with what I'm seeing Patrick Mahomes do this year, even though I'm kind of dogging the Chiefs right now, it only pushes the point further that he's the greatest quarterback of our generation. Not all the rings and all the MVPs. It's this. And you know why it's this? Because if there was any other QB playing for the Kansas City Chiefs, you'd be agreeing with me.
True.
You'd be agreeing with me wholeheartedly.
Yeah.
But they wouldn't be 8-4. They might be 4-8 if any other quarterback played for the Kansas City Chiefs.
Exactly.
This only pushes his greatness further. And they're struggling.
But there are peaks in there, and they got a good defense, right? A good to great defense, but that offense, man, you've seen it all season. Pacheco gets over 100 rushing yards in that game against Green Bay. They still lose, right? They still only put up 19 points. So they got some things. I'll say that they got some things they definitely need to figure out. Like at least the Eagles, you can look up and you can see Dallas Goedert, you see Zach Cunningham, you see Shaq Leonard getting added to the roster.
Yeah.
That's like adding three.
Right. There's no one coming through that wide receiver door for the Kansas City Chiefs.
For the Chiefs, man. So that's the concern there for sure.
I agree. And I don't know. It's just like
I get where you're coming from in that combo. Yeah. I do get where you're coming from. And I think it's fair to put them on upset alert. I think they're just that.
By the way,
team. They got that one quarterback that you put the asterisk for, and it's Patrick Mahomes.
By the way, if the ref just does his job and pulls that little yellow thing out of his pocket, we're probably talking about the Packers and the Chiefs in two different directions on the show today.
That's one of the worst non-calls I've ever seen in my life, and that's hard for me to say as an Eagles.
You know how like we don't like the officials getting involved late in games, like guys play. See, that's true to an extent.
Yeah.
You let a no call affect the game to a great extent.
Exhibit A of that scenario. Yeah, that's Exhibit A right there, where there's a line that can't be crossed when it comes to staying out of the end of game.
Dude, he took him for a piggyback ride to the 3-yard. Like,
no, man, come on. At the end of the game on national television, what makes me sick about it is that they just get away with it, man. Mm-hmm. They just get away with it. They'll move on to next week, go ref another game, fuck that one up too, and nothing's ever done about it. No fines. Nobody's allowed to talk about them, or they'll get fined. It's just, I don't know, man. It's really,
I don't know why they're so protected.
Sports, though. Refereeing is across sports, man. There's just way too many times where,
dude, off topic. But did you see the end of that? The end of that Suns Lakers game?
Yeah.
With the loose ball, and they give LeBron a timeout across the floor when the ball's already loose. Ends the game.
And then they doubled down on it after the game and say that they've reviewed it again and still came to the same. Like, no, you did.
Okay.
No, you did.
Right. Jerk-offs.
No, you didn't.
Anyway, man, looking back at week 13, is there anything else that you want to get into here? Any major takeaway storylines that you noticed from this past slate?
No, I guess I just had one more key takeaway, but not really a takeaway, just more of a question. Obviously, the Eagles and Chiefs lose this past weekend. Those were my two top teams in my NFL power rankings going into last week. They lose. Who do you look around the league and think, like, who has the most to prove, right? Like, the Eagles lose to the 49ers, but they just
Yeah.
beat the Chiefs, the Bills, Cowboys,
Bills,
Dolphins.
yeah.
It's not them, right? The Chiefs, they have some questions, right? The Ravens have some questions. The Lions obviously have
I
some
can tell you who it is right
Cowboys.
now. There it is.
The Cowboys.
Absolutely.
Yeah. I think I would
Absolutely.
agree with that
Because
as well, man.
as all of the heat and the negativity the Eagles are catching, at the same time, you've gotten this climb of Cowboys love and MVP Dak and this home winning streak and how they're going to win the NFC East. Listen, it's valid for the time being, and it's a conversation you can have, but it all ends if they lose on Sunday night.
Yeah.
Because again, it comes back to the point, when are you going to beat good teams that are put in front of you?
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That's the thing. That's the thing.
If you're the Cowboys and you got dogged by San Fran, you lost in Philly, and let's say hypothetically they lose Sunday night in Dallas, they go 0-2 versus Philly. We can just crumble up that conversation and throw it in the trash bin.
Yeah.
Because they should no longer have the respect of anybody when it comes to talking NFC Championship, Super Bowl, division, anything like that.
Yeah, no, I tend to agree. And I think when you look at like Detroit versus the Cowboys in that stance, what we just talked about with Detroit, they're not going to prove themselves before the playoffs. They're going to
absolutely not. And it goes into every media, like what it's America's team, right? Who gets all the coverage, who gets talked about daily for hours at a time. That team, they have the attention. To me, San Fran's got nothing to prove. They've already beat the Cowboys. They just dog walked the Eagles on the road. Whatever.
Yeah.
The Eagles, like you said, even if they were to lose this week, we're going to talk about them in a more negative way, but they've already beaten the Dolphins, the Cowboys, the Bills, the Chiefs. It's that team that has to prove they can beat one of the best teams in the league. And if they don't on Sunday night, then just erase them off the whiteboard because they shouldn't be a part of the conversation. So they have to win to keep themselves a part of that conversation, man. The AFC, I know we just kept that conversation strictly NFC. The AFC, I don't know. Like,
it's probably the Dolphins for me. I don't believe
I would agree.
The Jags the Jags are done without.
Because to your point, the Chiefs have beaten playoff ranked teams, the Jags, the Dolphins. They have beaten some of those teams this year, so they're there. The Ravens already beat the shit out of the Lions and the Seahawks this year. So when they got to play them, so they've won games like that.
The Ravens I would agree. Probably have the best opportunity to prove themselves over the last few weeks of the regular season. They got the Rams, the Jags.
I'm pulling for them, man. I'm pulling for them. If you go back to the our preseason picks, Eagles, Ravens, 1 seeds. I need it.
Yeah, I would love that, man.
I need it.
And they could help us out if they could.
The Super Bowl pick can't play out.
Beat the 49ers for us. That would be great. Get them off our backs.
My Super Bowl pick can't work out anymore, though, however, because Mr. Tim Boyle had to play for the Jets for a little bit, and now he's gone. What do you make of that before we move on? Because that is a major headline right now across the NFL. Tim Boyle gone, not playing anymore for the Jets. Probably rightfully so.
Going back to Zach Wilson,
but then they leaked the reports that Zach Wilson, doesn't really want to play for them. And they're, some people are taking it as he's quitting on the team. Aaron Rodgers is pissed off from that statement because I think the true sentiment is that he's nervous to take over the reins because of everything that's transpired. And he doesn't want to be embarrassed and look bad, look even worse than they already look. So what do you make of that? I mean, again, we talked about it earlier, how the Jets just did not address backup quarterback, or even when Rodgers went down, they didn't do anything about it. But all of this makes them look 1,000 times worse. I mean, if that's coming from inside, that source that he's the notion that he's quitting on the team and doesn't want to start again for them, like, shame on you, bro, because guess what? You drafted the kid where you shouldn't have drafted him. You put him in situation after situation where you shouldn't have put him. And guess what, man? If you start him this week and he goes out there, call the game like Aaron Rodgers is under center. Take the training wheels off. Stop handcuffing the goddamn kid and making him run, short pass. Just let him play. If it fails, you failed all year. But just see what the kid can actually do when you call a normal effing game plan.
Yeah, makes no sense. I mean, they look like a highly confused organization. They bring in Aaron Rodgers, which obviously was the move of the offseason, but just the way they handled everything afterwards has turned this into kind of a bad look for their organization overall, right? Like just bad decisions across the board. And you have to ask yourself, man, like Brees Hall, like this young talent guys, right? Has to be frustrated playing on this roster and going through this season the way they have. Like that defense, Sauce Gardner, those talented guys on the other end of the ball, you have to be tired of
Yep.
simply not making the postseason because you just don't have a quarterback. Like, let alone Aaron Rodgers, you just don't have a quarterback. And if you're Zach Wilson, it's like, haha, like you've already been embarrassed. Like it's probably too far gone for that. But on the other side of it, I do kind of get it. It's like, why'd you take me out in the first place? Now you want to throw me back in. It's like double embarrassment. You know what I mean? I go out, get taken out. Now I'm going to go back in. If I fuck up now, it's going to be under an even bigger microscope. So I don't know. It's just a bad situation all around. I don't know how you could, fix it. Maybe you go out and sign Joe Flacco like the Browns did.
Well,
Last week.
I was literally just about to bring this up to you right now. Listen, first of all, he was in the build. Like he was there. He was previously just there, right? Like, okay.
Yeah,
so second, you're again, anybody could have told you that 40-year-old Joe Flacco could probably produce more than Tim Boyle and Zach Wilson at this point, right? But B, my point about stop handcuffing Zach Wilson and just let him go down with the ship till the year ends and let him play football, because you're not trusting Zach Wilson to throw the football more than 5 yards down the field. You're run, short pass. Meanwhile, the Browns, with a worse team, a worse defense, less weapons offensively, brought Joe Flacco in off his living room couch 6 days ago and let him throw the ball 44 times.
He's a gunslinger. But yeah, I agree, man. That's the thing. As soon as this injury happened with Aaron Rodgers, after you lose a few games, just take those training wheels off Zach Wilson and let him fly. Like, if he falls on his face, he falls on his face, and you know what you have.
He's already fallen on his face, but you're leaving room. By the Jets calling games the way they're calling with him, you're leaving room for conversation. You're leaving room for what if you did this? Can he play in this? He and the organization have fallen flat on their face. A couple teeth have been knocked out this year with how ugly they've looked. Okay. Let him fall on his face on his own. You know what I'm saying?
No, yeah, I do.
By you handcuffing him, it makes you both look bad. At least by letting him go out there, whether he falls or soars, you find out if the kid can play at all or not. Now, unfortunately, you waited a little too late to even find it out for it to mean anything, because at this point you're screwed. And next year Rodgers is back, so there's no point in needing him for the future, more than likely. But nonetheless, man, the way they've handled that situation, from just everything, since the time they drafted Zach Wilson, it's just been an absolute disaster in New York for them. So
no, I completely agree.
It does. It makes you feel for Jets fans a little bit, man, because I remember the hype.
I can't feel for them. They beat us earlier this season, so no sympathy for them. But I feel you.
My language. What the fuck is up with this league? Think about this for a second. Think about the conversation we are having about the New York Jets and Zach Wilson and Tim Boyle and this franchise. And they were the only loss on the Eagles' schedule up until last week.
Insanity. I think it speaks to matchups.
Oh, and
it's a matchup-based league.
And they didn't have their best players on defense.
The two similarities between the 49ers and the Jets, very, very physical teams.
Sure.
Very, very physical teams.
Sure.
Hey, think about it, man. We had Robert Saleh come from the 49ers. That was their defensive coordinator before DeMeco Ryans. DeMeco Ryans last year obviously had that defense booming. He goes to the Texans, raises them up a little bit, and then you have that still physical presence of that 49ers defense being implemented there by the next coordinator. And I think it's just something that you kind of see getting passed around the league now. Jets, you go over there, Robert Saleh's running this like physical, aggressive defense. It's interesting to me. I just thought about that the other day after facing the 49ers like, man, how did they lose both of their defensive coordinators? Looking at it from our standpoint, like Eagles fans, how did they lose both of their defensive coordinators in the last few years, yet still keep that same physical, sturdy identity on defense? But yet we've gone coordinator after coordinator just looking for a defensive coordinator. But it makes you think that maybe these are just organizational philosophies, right?
Like it is.
I wish we would go after
to your point.
Like that.
To your point, from Saleh to D'Amico to who they have in charge right now.
Let me look it up so we give a little bit of respect to his name, because I don't.
What I would assume is those philosophies and schemes all stay the same or are very similar. Same here in Philly. Our schemes, our philosophies have stayed similar since Jim Schwartz left.
Steve Wilks.
It's Steve just Wilks. There it is. From Schwartz to Gannon to Desai, they all
same thing.
Yeah. By the way, we could talk about this more on tomorrow morning's Faith Fanatic show, but the Eagles are the worst team on defense on third downs, if you didn't know that. So like, just in case like you felt crazy watching the game, thinking to yourself like, man, we never get off the field in a big moment. We never get a third down. No, it's true. They are giving up close to 60% on third downs over the last couple. Well, it's not even just the whole season. It's been for the last I believe since Dallas. Yeah. Since the Dallas game or since Washington, they have given up almost 60% completion first down. So
it makes sense though with how I feel watching the game in third down.
At least we know we're not going insane, right? Yeah, we're not losing our minds watching this.
Doesn't matter the yardage. It can be third.
It could be third and 18. It could be third and 2.
Third and 21, and they'll still get that motherfucker every time.
Yeah, they will.
Man. It's got to change. Speaking of that, that's got to change for the Eagles. But maybe that's time to get into our power rankings, man.
It is, man. So
let them know where we're at.
Let's take a live look right here, and we'll reveal our number 10 here in a moment. But I'll leave this up for the time being. Our top 10 NFL power rankings heading into week number 14 here. Just glancing at both lists, man, they look identical. Identical. 1 through 8 were the same here, so that's why we'll leave the little T's down there for number 9s and 10s. Obviously you can see number 9, but listen, number 1, and shout out to former DSM member, our man Phil Stifel over there trending in the AM. He came out with his power rankings, and listen, I love it and I agree to an extent. Like, that just because the Eagles lost, it doesn't necessarily mean that they're not the best team in the league, if that makes sense. But power rankings are week to week. It changes every week. So to sit here and watch what transpired on Sunday and not like you have to. You can't. In my opinion, you have to change it.
It would feel delusional of me to put the Eagles over the 49ers after we lose by
this week.
Yeah. This week. I can't. Their defense is playing better. Their offense, while we think we have that advantage with Jalen Hurts, their offense looked a lot better now.
6 straight touchdowns
with defenses, right?
Correct.
6 straight touchdowns on that.
By the way, this game was played in Philadelphia.
Yeah, so I got to give credit where it's due, man.
Absolutely. I'm not going to. Yeah.
It's not that you knock off the top team and you're the top team, but when you're relatively close to the top, if the Ravens beat the Eagles, they would go to number 1 because the Eagles were at number 1. Correct. Cowboys beat the Eagles. They're not going to number 1 in this case, right? Because the Eagles are already down. But you get to next week and the Cowboys and Eagles have the same record and the Cowboys just beat the Eagles.
And it depends how, right? Like it does depend how when you're talking power rankings right now, because let's just say hypothetically, I don't want to get into that negative conversation, but if the Eagles were to lose, if they lose by 2 or 3, maybe the Cowboys don't jump them, right?
Yeah.
If the Cowboys beat them by 15 and we only beat them by 4 or 3 in that close game, Cowboys had a chance at the goal line. You're comparing how each team's playing in the moment. Eagles 2-game losing streak, Cowboys, Seattle, us. They would have to jump. That's the point. So that's why San Francisco has jumped the Eagles for the time being on the power rankings. Does not mean if they play in the NFC Championship, I'm taking the 49ers. Just means right now they're the better team week to week. San Fran, Eagles number 2, They lost to the best team in the league at the moment. That's not shade. You're not going to drop them more than that. That's fine. Ravens coming in at number 3 for both of their current number 1 seed out in the AFC. Coming off a bye, right? They didn't play last week. So Baltimore, fresh legs, right? See what Lamar and company look like coming out of the bye. They stay there. Dallas, number 4. This team got bumped up a spot by each of us. They've continued to climb over the last couple of weeks. They finally did get that win over a above 500 team in the Seattle Seahawks. They move up to number 4.
To your point earlier, when you were talking about the Chiefs, I think right now you look at the Cowboys over the Chiefs. It's like, the Cowboys best win, Seahawks, Chiefs. You can go back to Dolphins, right? So you can go back a couple different games where they proved themselves, but it just speaks to where the Chiefs are right now, right? And where the Cowboys are right now. And you asked me, could the Chiefs keep up with an offense? I think that's one of those offenses that you have to ask yourself, can they keep up
Could
with
they?
it?
Yeah. And it sure doesn't feel like it heading into week 14. That's the point of the power rankings, everybody. Absolutely. Chiefs coming in at number 5. You lose that game to Jordan Love, Sunday Night Football. You're now 8-4. I mean, to be fair, we have them above 2 3-win teams and another 8-4 team, right? So we're still being pretty good to the Kansas City Chiefs in terms of this list, but they come in at 5. They've dropped a few slots for each of us. The Dolphins come in at number 6. No change there for either of us. They beat the Washington Commanders. Good for you. You're 9-3.
I considered moving the Dolphins ahead of the Chiefs. I did. But I just couldn't. I don't know.
But think about this. Again, I'm going to come back to the list, right? That's why you can't be too drastic week to week, because I just told you I would probably take the Dolphins right now if they played the Chiefs again or in the AFC playoffs. But in terms of this list, you can't punish the Chiefs that many slots for losing one game, and they're still
number
2. They did beat Miami. So until further notice, I can't be validated about Miami beating them, right? So Dolphins come in at 6. Detroit, you bumped them up a slot. I kept them right at 7. The Jags coming in at number 8. For both of us, obviously, I'll stick them there. Trevor Lawrence injury, you drop a 1, can't complain at all. Number 9, you do have CJ Stroud and the Houston Texans. I have the Pittsburgh Steelers sitting at 7-5. I'm going to be honest with you. When I sent it to you, for some reason, glossed over the fact that they got their ass kicked by the Arizona Cardinals in Pittsburgh last weekend. So probably would fiddle with it a little bit if I had to right now. And coming in at number 10, you were the Cleveland Browns. I had the Indianapolis Colts, man. Again, it's just a week-to-week kind of thing for me. The Texans are a great pick. That's the team I would probably have in over the Pittsburgh Steelers right now.
That's just quarterback versus defense, right? That's a lot of these situations. Same with the Browns versus the Texans. It's quarterback versus defense. The Colts, Browns, I don't know. You could probably they're interchangeable for me, honestly. The Steelers.
I would tell you this. You have Texans, Browns. I have Steelers, Colts, AFC North, AFC South. Those 4 teams would be a continuation of 10. It would go down 11, 12. In any order between those 4 teams, it would be 9, 10, 11, 12 with those 4 teams.
Steelers, Colts would be next for me as well. So, I agree.
Do you think we're being too harsh when it comes to Seattle? 6-5, almost like they lost, but almost beat Dallas on the road, scored 35 points, or being too harsh by leaving them off? How far down would Seattle be if you continued this list? Because again, then you have a team like the Rams sitting at 6-6, beat Seattle twice. Do the Rams deserve to be ahead of the Seahawks?
Right. That's a great question. And my mind even goes to
the Bills, 6-6. Do the Bills deserve to be a continuation?
My mind even goes to the Broncos, even just putting them in that wagon with them. So the thing with the Seahawks, man, you see them against the Ravens? No, not the Ravens, right? No, it was the Ravens, 37-3. They lose to the Cowboys. That was probably their best game of the season.
Their best loss,
and it was a loss. They beat the Lions earlier in the season in overtime. But the Rams, I think that's a great question. I don't think I can put them over the Rams with the Rams healthy. That's the big thing. them getting
You
healthy
can't,
right
and
now.
that's what
The
these
Seahawks
power rankings
don't
come
have an
down to.
excuse.
Yeah,
Like
fine.
there's no excuse for where they're at right now.
I think that's a great point. You know, you kind of forget about some of these teams when you're going through your lists, and it's like I think the reason why is Seattle was on my list for a large portion of the first half of the year.
Gave them
The
the benefit
Rams
of the
never
doubt.
were sniffing my list earlier in the year, so you don't really think about the Rams or a team like that leapfrogging a good team like Seattle. But when it comes down to it, you have a 6-5 team or a Seattle 6-6 now.
6-6.
6-6. You have two 6-6 teams in the same division, and the one team won both games that they played head to head. So in no way, shape, or form should Seattle be ahead of the LA Rams right now.
Like, is Seattle beating the Packers right now with the last two games that we've seen from the Packers?
Right.
The Chiefs and Lions they've beaten.
It's a good question. That would actually be an interesting matchup.
Yeah.
Packers Seahawks.
Yeah, I'm not saying the Packers would win. I'm just saying good matchup right there. That's probably where the Seahawks are at right now.
I'll tell you what, to wrap up the show, I will say this about all of those mediocre 500 teams that are shocking us and surprising us and surging towards a postseason spot right now as the year winds down. As a football fan, it makes me happier than where I was 7 weeks ago. Because, dude, we were looking at the bottom end of this NFC playoff picture, and I wanted to vomit. I'm not saying it's pretty now just because these teams are playing a little better.
Yeah.
But I wanted to throw up at some of these playoff matchups.
Yeah.
And now you see the way that some of these teams are heating up. Jordan Love looks like an actual NFL quarterback compared to week 5 of the league. Matthew Stafford and company getting healthier, putting up points. You get a matchup like, the Rams and the Niners in round 1. It doesn't seem so bad after what it was seeming like earlier on in the season. So for all these teams to step up the way the Texans, right? The Texans, we did not give 2 shits about before the year started. The Texans are getting to the point where if they're on television, you're going to watch them.
Yeah.
Because that quarterback and those young weapons have them exciting to watch.
Yeah. Who do you think's the most unwatchable team right now in the NFL?
That's a great fucking question. The most unwatchable team is the New York Jets. It's the New York Jets. I mean, dude, they can't move the. I mean, Scotty, Scotty, they scored 8 points. That's a good point. The New England Patriots are number 1. The New England Patriots.
Even the Panthers, it's like you can watch, for the rookie quarterback, but these other teams.
I take it back. The Patriots are number 1. The Patriots are an absolute disaster.
Yeah.
They're 2-10. They're 1-6 in Foxborough. I mean, that should just never happen. Their quarterback is a mess. I mean, you just lost the game 6-0. There wasn't a single touchdown scored in this match. You played the Chargers defense, man. You didn't play the Steelers defense or the Niners defense. You played the Chargers. And you couldn't score a field goal?
The Chargers are pretty painful to watch too. I feel
they're horrible to watch.
They do have Justin Herbert.
Oh yeah.
They have Austin Eckler. They have Keenan Allen, but they still just
I would say, all right, let's do this, right? Let's come up with a list. All right. The Jets are definitely on there. The Patriots are number 1. The Panthers are definitely still on there, even though you do have something to watch in Bryce Young.
Yeah, there's still
the Giants with Tommy. Let's just stop. The Giants are a very difficult watch.
You won't catch me watching the Titans.
Dude, yeah, that's true. The Titans are a bad watch too. I'm going to throw a team that's on my top 10 power rankings.
The Steelers.
The Steelers are a disgusting product to watch.
They're on there. Yeah.
They're horrifying. Dude, they are the one team in the league that you are excited when their defense is on the field over their offense. I would much rather watch TJ Watt and that defense on the field than Kenny Pickett or Mitch Trubisky in this.
Somehow the Browns are more entertaining, even with their quarterback injury.
1,000%.
It's weird.
By a mile. They're a very tough watch. Dude, the Cardinals absolutely stink. Kyler's back. The Cardinals are not as bad of a watch as some of these other teams are. So yeah, it's a great question, man. Very good question, actually. I mean, you got some other front runners, right? I mean, Chicago's a tough watch. They scored 4 field goals in one game.
Tough watch, I would say.
Yeah, but at least Atlanta's got some story to them, right?
They got
Bijan,
they got Bijan, they
you
got Kyle Pitts, you got Drake
Ooh,
London on
yeah,
the
I mean,
outside.
tell my
So you
fantasy team, tell the rest of my
Yeah.
fantasy team that Kyle
Exactly.
Pitts is active because
it ain't as successful
they don't
as it
know.
sounds.
Let me ask you this before we wrap up. Speaking of Kyle Pitts, I'm 1 week away from my fantasy playoffs in my one league. I need to win and I get in. All right. Kyle Pitts started for me all year. Stinks. Terrible.
Very mid.
Terrible.
Below mid.
Do I play Dalton Kincaid this week over Kyle Pitts with a playoff spot on the line?
Absolutely. Yeah. Better quarterback, better offense. Yeah. Even against the Chiefs.
Because in the beginning of the year, even though Pitts sucked,
Stephon Diggs
Kincaid just wasn't getting the ball at all. Like Kincaid would have games with one catch for 8 yards, and I was like, well, I'm not going to play him over him. But then you kind of forget that he's down there low on your bench, and you just go week to week and up. But I do. I think I gotta. Definitely got to do it. But anyway, thanks for the fantasy help, guys. With that said, that is going to wrap up this Thursday edition, Week 13 takeaways and recap, updated power rankings on the DSM Media NFL Turf Talk YouTube channel. Guys, if you are new to the channel, if you like the content, if you want to be interactive throughout any of our shows here, we're live every Sunday morning to break down the slate of games for that particular week. Make sure to smash that subscribe button, turn on notifications for whenever we post a video or go live here on the channel. You can also find us on YouTube, DSM Media Philadelphia YouTube channel, all things Philly sports, Eagles pregame, Sixers pregame, Faithful Fanatic show will be live tomorrow, 8:30 a.m., breaking down Eagles, Dallas, and much, much more.
Yes,
for myself, for Scotty, enjoy the rest.